What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again, and wow, there is simultaneously a lot to talk about here, and not a lot to talk about here. Most of it is pretty self-explanatory or announced, but done so in a very vaguely detailed way. So, Bungie has announced the fall DLC, Shadowkeep, and before we get started, let's go ahead and talk about the 900-pound gorilla in the room. Shadowkeep is going to consist of a lot of reskinned content.
The moon is kind of us like dipping our toes in the water to see how it feels, and it's also us taking an awesome stab at what does it mean to take a place that we've been to before and update it into a new context.
Am I the only one that got the mental image of Rise of Iron sitting there looking at Luke Smith going, "Am I a joke to you?" The explanation given by Luke Smith as to why they're reskinning a bunch of content is pretty weak, considering they've already gone back to a destination, reimagined it, and brought it forward back into relevancy with new content. That was, and maybe I'm mistaken, maybe I'm misremembering, the entire point of Rise of Iron. And to be clear, I'm not saying they shouldn't go back to old destinations and reimagine them. More so, when doing so, makes a lot of sense, like with the moon. The Hellmouth was the seat of power for Crota, and the moon, relatively speaking, is on our doorstep. So if you're gonna stage an invasion of Earth, that's where you want to do it from. Returning to places of power, like the Hellmouth, like the Dreadnought, like the Black Garden, to me, that all makes sense. And for me personally, when it comes to reskins and reused assets, as I said before and I'll say it again here, I don't mind them if there's a narrative point to it. The new weapons and armor, for example, that we got in Season of Opulence. Scavenged pieces of armor from the old tower that Callus imbued with royal wine crystals. Sure, cool, fine, whatever. The implementation does leave a lot to be desired, and I was hoping we'd see new weapon perks because of this new power, but it is what it is. And hey, the console version finally has a 140 hand cannon that actually feels good to use, so there is that. That said, a fairly comprehensive list of enemy bosses from Destiny 1 being brought back because something Eris, something unleashed the darkness, something the wizard came from the moon. Yeah, I'm gonna need a little more of an explanation before I'm entirely sold. And hey, that doesn't mean that there's not an explanation, and that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna be sold. Just, at this point in time, the stuff that we saw on the stream and the stuff that was talked about hasn't really sold the justification to me, yet. And I hope they do. But if you ask me, as it stands, what the sales pitch is on what you get when you buy Shadowkeep, which is an important distinction because things like Mods 3.0, you're going to get regardless. It's one of those quality of life changes that affects the entire game, just like the sandbox changes we got with Forsaken. But if I was going to give you the elevator pitch of what the paid version of Shadowkeep brings to the table, basically something Eris has awoken the hive on the moon, and now the darkness is conjuring a bunch of bosses that we fought in Destiny 1, and one boss that we fought in Destiny 2. Oh yeah, and you get a reimagining of the moon, Rise of Iron style. And somehow, maybe the Black Garden and the Exo Stranger is connected to all of this, because the Black Garden is the raid, and we see No Time to Explain in the teaser. So, there is that. Yeah, I think they could have done a little bit better at outlining what you actually get when you pay for Shadowkeep, so. I understand that that's a mild complaint because we have all summer for them to explain that, but they're already asking us to pay for it, so maybe they could have outlined what we get when we buy it a little bit better. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. And to play devil's advocate, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that there's no way that they couldn't reskin all these things and do it extremely well and tell an engaging story. It's completely possible. It's entirely possible. I hope it's possible. I want it to be possible. But I need to see more. Why do we have all these reskinned bosses? Why is Crota whole? Why isn't Crota the version from the Dark Below? Why is Taniks not the Rise of Iron version? Why is Fogoth here? Why is Omnigul here? Why is Gull here? Why is Skolas here? Why do we see all these characters that are allegedly from our nightmares, but where's Oryx? And who's this new faction of Hive? Who do they follow? Is it Ziva Arath? Is it Savathun? Did Bungie suddenly remember that we kind of didn't kill Nokris, but we killed him, but we didn't, but we did, but we didn't? The lore was really hazy on whether Nokris did or did not have a throne world. He should have, but then it sounded like he gave it up, but then he should have, but he might have given it up. We really don't actually have an answer to that. Or is this just some random Hive dude that we've never seen before? Questions like this really do need to be answered when it comes to the story. And we need to see a roadmap of what people are buying and what people are getting for free, just like we saw with all of the seasons. All of that said, I do have to admit that Shadowkeep wasn't really the big announcement here. The big announcement was all the changes that are coming along with Shadowkeep. But before we dive into that fully, can we take a moment to talk about the new Bungie and their, shall we say, newfound cattiness?
We wanted cross-save before we shipped Destiny 2, right? Like a bunch of it was built. We just couldn't get there for capital R reasons. And many of those reasons have disappeared. So we are headed full steam ahead on that. And we got to figure out how we're going to get there and how we're going to give the players what they want.
Bungie clearly blames other parties, maybe Activision, maybe Sony, for the state of Destiny 2, or at least that seems to be the public face. Though the original contract stated that Bungie retained all creative control over the Destiny franchise, so how that wound up working out, only they know. But it's a good marketing pitch. If Bungie indirectly blames other parties like Sony or Activision for the state of Destiny 2, then promise to make it all better, all they have to do is deliver on that promise. It's a great marketing pitch. The problem is, they have to deliver on that promise. If they can't deliver on those promises, well, there's nobody but Bungie to blame. All of that said, the biggest part of Bungie's livestream had little to do with the Shadowkeep expansion and more to do with the franchise moving forward. Two of the biggest changes are Destiny 2 Year 1 going free to play. And I'm gonna have to sidebar this for a moment because I'm gonna be real, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be real honest. Anyone, and I mean anyone, who has a problem with Destiny 2 Year 1 going free to play, you are insane. Like, I mean certifiable. I mean, you are like the men in the white coats. They're coming to take you away, ho ho, hee hee, ha ha, to the funny farm where life is beautiful all year round. Let me phrase the point like this. Do you get upset when, after 2 years, a movie that 2 years ago it came out, you went to go see Avengers, whichever one came out 2 years ago, and you spent $80. You know, you bought your tickets, you bought some popcorn, maybe you bought some drinks at the bar, and the whole experience ran you $60, $70, $80, $90, $100. Do you lose your absolute shit when suddenly, 2 years later, that movie's on TV? Destiny 2 being free to play can only be good, especially when it's the bad content that's free anyways, with the side effect of getting more people into Gambit, getting more people into Strikes, getting more people into the Crucible, which is what we want. So anybody upset about this, you're being kind of petty. I get the argument, you paid for it, I paid for it too. But now I'm looking at the health of the game over my own selfish annoyances. But anyways, back to the point. So Destiny 2 Year 1 is going free to play across all platforms. Not only will it be going free to play, but if players choose to, they can skip about 40 hours of grind and get right to the end game. Now, I still want the ability to recreate my character with new character creation options, but in lieu of that, being able to skip basically the entire game whenever I make a new character, I guess that's a compromise I can live with for now. That said, really, how hard would it be to make a character recreator? I mean, the character creator is already in the game, why not just let me re-access it? But that's a tangent for another time. Personally, like I said, I'm entirely okay with them giving away this content, especially if it brings more people into the game, because that's more people in the game. And that's not ever going to be a bad thing. The second announcement is cross-save, which is actually probably part of the reason Destiny went free to play, because if Bungie is doing cross-save correctly, then all my licenses should carry over no matter what platform I'm on. So all I have to do is download Destiny 2, log in, and that's it. Bada bing, bada boom. I can just move between any of the platforms that it's on, and I don't have to worry about shit for fuck. All of that wonderfulness said, I've seen mixed reports on how cross-save will actually work when it comes to player licensing. If you have a Bungie.net account, which it looks like you'll need to access cross-save, Bungie knows which licenses you own. Since all DLC in Destiny 2 is permission-based, and those permissions are account-based, and all DLC is added to the world at all times, then there's no reason why server-side on the back end, once you link your accounts together, Bungie doesn't grant permissions to all content on all platforms that you wish to play it on, so long as you've purchased that content before. The way it should work is when I log in and I say that I want to play Destiny on PC and I want to play it on Xbox, and I link all of those accounts together, I just have access to everything I've bought. Because if it's not like that, then what? Can I not use Thorn on PC because that's tied to a DLC? Can I not use Last Word on PC? Because that's tied to a DLC. In the stream, Bungie stated that a total migration of accounts was something that they were doing from Battle.net to Steam. So it is something that they can do. But they never addressed how DLC will work when it comes to cross-save. So I guess we'll know when we know. People like me, yeah, I'll probably buy it again on PC if I have to, just so I can play with fans there. But it's not a real priority. All of my friends and family, they're on Xbox, so I don't ever see myself doing a full migration anyways. For me, it'll eventually be a business purchase. For your average John and Jane 2-sticks though, asking them to put down another $40 on something that they already own, and then $70 for Shadowkeep, if they want to keep playing with their console friends and their PC friends, well, I know people will do it, but I don't think it'll be enough to warrant locking people out of content that they've already purchased in one form or another. In fact, Bungie has already made the strongest argument themselves as to why all your licensing should carry over no matter where you're at.
We all have friends who could play Destiny, who are interested in it, but then we think about recommending it like, oh man, you're gonna have to play about 40 hours by yourself, and then you gotta pay all this money, and maybe you should just play something else, and that can't be the story.
Finally, something me and Bungie management actually agree on. That cannot be the story. When I go to migrate to PC, and then I'm asked to spend $40 on something I already own, and then another $70 to keep playing on both platforms, I start to not care about your new feature. I start to think to myself, hey, that game that looked like anime Big Titty Dark Souls, that looks kinda cool. Or that new Darksiders game that looks like Diablo, that looks kinda cool. Or Pokemon Sword and Shield, when does that come out again? And since this feature launches in September alongside Shadowkeep, if your already owned licenses do not guarantee you access across all three platforms, that's a $75 in-the-door ask. $40 for Forsaken and Annual Pass 1, and then $35 for Shadowkeep. And because it's cross-save, if you want to keep playing on your old platform, that's another $35 on top of that, bringing us to $110 just to utilize cross-save across two platforms. It's not something I think Bungie can really get away with, more so when we already have things like Fortnite and their Battle Pass, where if you want to go from your Xbox to your PC to your Switch, everything carries over. And we know Bungie can do that same thing. So the only question is, will they? Personally speaking, obviously, I don't think it would be a smart move for them, but when has that ever stopped Bungie from doing anything? But moving forward, the last thing I want to talk about is the quality of life changes coming to Destiny, or the RPG-ification, the MMO-ification of Destiny. Like many things in this live stream, we don't know the full details, but we did get glimpses. Publicly, Bungie has started calling Destiny an MMO, but in its current state, it's far from one. Right now, it's basically Halo with raids and a social space. Part of changing that perception will be to go all in on stats, build diversities, and as they put it, going all out on kitting out your monster killing machine. One example that we see during the live stream is Bungie's plans for Mods 3.0. Now, of course, blanket disclaimer, everything is always subject to change. And Bungie didn't do a really great job of explaining what Mods 3.0 will be. But at one point in the vid doc, you can see an image on a screen where they're showing off a bunch of mods. Well, one of the other things you can see there is different stat splits. Now, you have your current Destiny 2 stat splits where it's mobility, resilience, and recovery. Interesting note, they actually have numbers next to the bars. So, that's a great change. I hope that's not just a dev tool, because let me tell you, that would be really great if it was in the game, because I really don't like having to go out of my way to some third-party site just to see if one hand cannon's better than another. Just saying it would be a great change. Anyways, moving forward, back to the point. The other set of stats that we see on this armor are intellect, discipline, and strength, stats from Destiny 1. In Destiny 1, for those of you who do not know, intellect, discipline, and strength were stats that determined how quick your super, grenade, and melee would recharge. So for example, if it took 5 minutes for your super to recharge, having a maxed out intellect stat would drop that cooldown to 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Mind you, that's just standing there, so it'll be quicker with orbs and kills and stuff like that. That said, if this is where they're going to go with gear and stats, that means they need to fundamentally, from the ground up, rebuild every class. because there's some classes that wouldn't benefit from this whatsoever, or some classes that would be way too OP. Here's an example of a class that wouldn't necessarily benefit from this change. Top Tree Striker Titan. As a Top Tree Striker Titan, I spawn with 2 grenades. Seismic Strike feeds into Aftershock, which means if I shoulder charge someone, I get my grenades back. Skull Fort also allows me to regenerate my health, and I get my melee back. So basically, playing my class the way it's supposed to be played means I always have my grenades, I always have my melee ability, and I always have health regen. And if you trade a kill and you lose shoulder charge, then you lose this synergy. So your class is basically crippled until you get shoulder charge back. So I guess in that instance, having a quicker melee recharge rate would be beneficial, but that doesn't happen, or it happens so rarely that it's not worth noting. The only benefit from tier 12 gear that a current Top Tree Striker would see is from the super. But the super sucks. It really does. If you see a Striker Titan going off with their super for a long period of time in the Crucible, that's because they're a bottom tree Titan. Top Tree Titan basically gets 3 to 4 slams and then they're done, which honestly, in my opinion, is a fair trade-off, because we do get shoulder charge and we get grenades. What Bungie needs to do with the subclasses if they're bringing back tier 12 gear is expand them as well. Play more into the RPG, play more into the customization. There was a lot in this live stream, but there was also very little. We were shown glimpses of a game that still has the better part of 4 months before it's done developing. That's a lot of time for things to change. So I can see why Bungie would want to be a little vague when it comes to the nuts and bolts of what's actually being put in this expansion. That said, Bungie has stated that they will show us more over the summer, and as negative as this video might have sounded, I'm actually really interested to see what they have to show off. I'm super interested in seeing what the new mod system is going to be like, and the new artifact system. That looked really cool too. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you're interested, what you're excited about in the comments below. And like always, stay frosty.